These are movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 1. Interstellar, which was actually originally developed for Steven Spielberg, and Jonathan Nolan took the script to his own brother. American Sniper. Rain Man. Meet the Parents, but with Jim Carrey. A haunting remake written by Stephen King. Big Fish with Jack Nicholson. 3 Star Wars movies. First one was Force Awakens. He was the first one Kathleen Kennedy called. The next one was Phantom Menace. George Lucas offered it to him and he said no. And Return of the Jedi, which he got kind of close to, but because George Lucas wasn't working with the guilds, which is a whole nother story, Steven Spielberg wouldn't break from that and direct Return of the Jedi. These are movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 2. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone. Steven Spielberg wanted to actually combine a bunch of the books into an animated film, was one of his ideas, and the other one was to have Haley Joel Osment play Harry Potter. Big, which was written by his sister, The Truman Show, Exodus, Gods and Kings, Cruising, The Little Things, Cape Fear with Harrison Ford and Bill Murray. Originally, Steven Spielberg was going to do Cape Fear, and Martin Scorsese had Schindler's List, and they decided to swap projects because Steven Spielberg wanted to do a more prestige film and do Schindler's List, which he'd been talking about for a while, and Martin Scorsese wanted a commercial hit, and the rest is, history and so forth. These are movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 3. Superman, the 1978 one, but he was busy with Close Encounters. Old Boy, but with Will Smith. Robopocalypse with Chris Hemsworth. I'm not sure what that's about, but it sounds really cool. Walter Mitty. The original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Trial of Chicago 7 with Heath Ledger and Will Smith. Also in his version, also had Sacha Baron Cohen cast as Abby Hoffman. Memoirs of a Geisha. He contacted the producers of Bond to work on The Spy Who Loved Me, but this was before he made it big, so they rejected him. And then he called them after he made it big to hopefully work on Moonraker, but they also rejected him, and he lost interest in trying to direct a Bond film. Movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 4. Three Amigos, which he seriously considered, with Steve Martin, Robin Williams, and Bill Murray. Flush with Pride, the story of Thomas Crapper. This is actually about the guy who invented the flushing toilet, and Steven Spielberg considered making this his feature film debut. Arkansas, which was a Western starring Tom Cruise. Ghost Soldiers, which was a war movie starring Tom Cruise. A Ulysses S. Grant movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. A Martin Luther King biopic, which Steven Spielberg bought the life rights for Martin Luther King, and also all the rights to all of his speeches. So that's why in the movie Selma, they actually had to write original speeches for Martin Luther King. Steven Spielberg has the rights for a movie he still has yet to actually make. Movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 5. Close Encounters 2. This would be about the government covering up the events of the first film, but Steven Spielberg didn't want a franchise out of his control, which is what happened with Jaws, so he decided not to do it. E.T. 2. This would have been about Ellie and his friends get kidnapped by a bunch of evil aliens who then torture them and try to send rescue messages to E.T., who ultimately saves them. Night Skies, which is the film he was developing, where he came up with both the ideas of E.T. and Poltergeist, but ultimately wouldn't happen. Poltergeist, which he wanted to direct, but didn't. Clause in his contract with Universal prevented Steven Spielberg from directing another movie while he was prepping E.T., so he did not direct this movie. Movies Steven Spielberg almost directed, but didn't. Part 6. A Harvey remake starring either Will Smith, Robert Downey Jr., or Tom Hanks. Black Hawks, a comic book movie he thought about making since about the 80s, and you kind of hear it brought up every now and then pretty regularly, and at one point it was going to be starring Dan Aykroyd. Reel to Reel, which was going to be a semi-autobiographical musical about a director who's making a musical remake of Invaders from Mars. Kind of sounds like 8.5 to me, but I don't know. The Mark, a Rob Liefeld written spec script, which would have starred Will Smith, and The Martian Chronicles.